by Rode Microphones, and official Van Halen merchandise is provided by VanHalenStore.com. Now, here's your host from Ontario, Canada, EVH gear artist Eric Broadbent.
Happy Wednesday to you all, everyone. Welcome to evh Gear TV. We are live, and I think we could probably safely entitle this one Part 4 of the Sons of Apollo interview series, 4 of 5. I'm joined by the frontman and lead vocalist, Jeff Scott Soto. Jeff, how are you?
Great, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here. Had we known that we would be going to Game 7 of the World Series, I think we might have scheduled a different time. I mean, the game just started, but you know what? Just like in rock and roll, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So I think by the time we're done here, I'll catch the tail end of the game, and hopefully it'll be to our favor.
Perfect. I hope so, too. And we'll keep things flowing nice and quickly tonight, too, because I think there's a lot of people that want to watch the game as well, too.
Absolutely.
I kind of gave up on baseball a little bit. I grew up as a Tigers fan, and now I converted over to a Blue Jays fan, even though I'm a Canadian. You'd think I'd be the other way around, whatever, but that's my love of baseball. But we're going to jump over and say hi to a bunch of people in the chat throughout the evening here. But let's get right into it. You've had the greatest career working with some of the best guitar players in the business. You know, even currently right now in the current band, you've got Ron Bumblefoot Thal in the band. You know, you've worked with Yngwie, you've worked with just so many great names. But let's take all those guys aside, and this is not to say anything about them at all, but you have a fascination with Van Halen. You're wearing the Van Halen 2 t-shirt. What is it about Eddie Van Halen that just captivates you?
Oh, Jesus, besides the word everything. He was the trifecta. He had everything, from the sense of he was a pioneer of the guitar, of course. He had the image. I mean, every guy wanted to be him. Every girl wanted to be with him. And then there's the songwriting. And actually, there's one thing that most people don't actually talk about with Eddie. And me being a singer, I actually know this. I actually really appreciate this. As a rhythm guitar player, nobody gives Eddie Van Halen credit. He's a pioneer of the solos and all these crazy things that he came up with. But if anybody actually locked in and listened to him as a rhythm guitar player, he's one of the best in the business. There's two people I think are, as far as rock and roll guitar, that's Eddie Van Halen and Zakk Wylde, the two greatest rhythm guitar players. Because most of the lead players, they're kind of sloppy, their tempo, their timing, and all that. But Eddie is so tight. Now, granted, maybe that's because of so many years playing with Alex. Mm-hmm. Those guys are they're two peas in a pod, but his rhythm guitar playing is just so solid. And I guess that's another thing that added to what made Eddie Van Halen. The songs, I mean, forget about it. He's written so many just ridiculous riffs, and you hear these riffs and it just makes you so happy and so giddy, as it did when those Van Halen albums first came out. And then, of course, you go to the solo playing. It's when he came onto the scene, there was nothing like him. There was, it was during a time when new wave was happening. There's no rock pioneers or guitar players of bands were hitting when Van Halen came out. It is absolutely amazing that they were able to penetrate through and become one of the biggest bands in the world. So you factor in everything that guy had going for him at such an early age, and how could he not be one of the biggest legends in the history of rock and roll?
I agree, and I'm really happy you said that, and I'll tell you why. Because I think I think right now you're the first lead vocalist, that I've had on the show. Guitar players, I had bass players, things like that, but I've not had the lead vocalist on the show before. So it's nice getting that from a perspective from the singer. Now, number one, we talk about this a lot. Eddie's playing on here, and he is often overlooked for his rhythm. The kids that they hear Eruption, they want to play that. They don't even know Eddie plays. They might even think there's a rhythm guitar player in the band. They might actually think that because they focus on the leads, and I'm talking the younger generation. So So that's very, very cool. The fact that you hear that as a singer. Number two, you nailed it on the head with Alex. I say this a lot in the show, and the guests echo this statement a lot too. I attribute 3 things to the swing of Van Halen, and also Eddie, like I say, Eddie's rhythm playing. Number one, right. You said it, Eddie playing with Alex. If they didn't have a bass player as kids, they would just get, from the time they got up to the time they went to sleep, they jammed together, empty.
They were like White Stripes.
Yeah, and that is hard. I've gone to band practices without a bass player, and it kind of sucks, but, they did it. Number two, before David Lee Roth came in the band, their father had as much soul and swing as anybody, in California.
Sure.
And then number 3, David Lee Roth comes in the band, love him or hate him. He gets in the band, he brings a repertoire of R&B and dance to the band. So there you take, that's the trifecta of swing right there.
Right.
The fact that they didn't do overdubs. Eddie had to be for the most part back then. Eddie had to become the lead and rhythm player, and it was amazing. His leads and rhythms are equal in my books.
And then even when you had Michael Anthony's bass, I mean, a song like "Push Comes to Shove"
Yes.
or "So This Is Love." I mean, there's so much swing and swagger. It's for days. I mean, these guys they had it in spades. Beautiful Girls. I mean, the riff and that is just the swing and it's not something you can just, as a guitar player, just play, and you got to feel that. It's got to like run through your veins, and that's one of the beautiful things about those songs. That as much as they're known for hard rock and the heavier side of things, they had so much swing and swagger. It's oh my God, I love this band. And again, when I say I love this band, I am specifically talking about the traditional Van Halen, the David Lee Roth years. I know there's a separation, there's a division. Everybody's got their opinions. You know, I love Sammy Hagar with every fiber of my being. I love him as a singer. I love him as a person. I love what he brought to Van Halen. What he did with that band and the reinvention of Van Halen, I don't think anybody else could have done. And they proved that with trying to continue with other people and not taking away from Gary Sharon, because I love him too.
Sure.
But Sammy brought his own thing to it. But Van Halen to me is those first few albums, those first 5 albums with Dave, you know, I'm sorry, 6 albums. That was the element of the ultimate party band mixed in with these guys are just stepping over the rest of you. You just step aside because this is the ultimate band. This is the band you want to be. You want to be in, you want to be. They were the epitome of rock and roll.
Yep. And even at times where towards the end of their career, when I say towards the end of their career, I mean at the end of it as we know it with Roth, you know, around the 84, their final tours, leading up into 85, even when they're at each other's throats, those guys, you if you did not know the band, you would think these guys are the best brothers. They love each other. They put on a show for the fans.
Right.
It was just absolutely amazing. And like you say, too, nothing to take away from Sammy Hagar. I will just pretty much take any singer in Van Halen as long as it means I can get a ticket and go watch them play. But it's like a corporation. You know, you take any corporation out there, you've got your founding members of the corporation, and the company will even trim it down to a small company. The company goes for years. It has success. It has milestones. One of the founding members of the company decides to leave. They bring in another executive. He or she does a good job. Maybe it's not the same beliefs that the original founder had, but it keeps going. But David Lee Roth really set the foundation for many bands to follow, and it's really cool to hear that. And I kind of figured you'd be the Roth school of rock too, being obviously a front man and a rock and roll singer. I think Dave just has that party swagger. And the fact you go back just a tiny bit to you talking about all the swing and whatnot too, I think that had another catalyst in bringing men, women, people of all ages into this music that would normally be just the guys. I'm sure there's a lot of guys, you know, with their fists in the air, whatever, but they brought in cross people as well too.
I think I side more for the Roth era because that was the era that influenced me before I actually became an artist, before my time with Yngwie began. I think it was only a year after. Yes, it was. It was a year after I was with Yngwie when the switch happened with Hagar. So by the time Sammy was in the band, I was now concentrating on being an artist as opposed to just being a fan and just being somebody influenced by the things around me. Right. And I think that was a major contributor. If I were still a struggling artist, if I was just still finding my legs and trying to become what I eventually became, I might have found a little more. I might have sided more for Sammy in that sense. I love what he brought. The hits, some of the album tracks, that just amazing songs. But the Roth era just takes me to a place of growth. It takes me to that memory of when everything was so young and fresh and vital and just pure and just like, I can't wait to do this for a living. And David Lee Roth, he's the personification of the ultimate rock star. He was the front man for all frontmen. You know, he had the gift of gab. He wasn't the greatest singer. Again, he doesn't get the accolades for being a great singer. He was not a Steve Perry or Freddie Mercury or Lou Gramm for his time. But what he brought as a frontman, as a personality, completely blanketed that. And that was, again, what made Van Halen the perfect rock band in every factor. Even the ballads, you know, he got away with whatever vocal limitations, if you want to call it that, and he turned it into something that was just it was a post stamp. It was like incredible.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question I did not have written down tonight, but I asked Billy the same question. Now, this was actually proposed to Billy. You know, Billy, this was rumored for a long time, and Billy confirmed it as well, too. Billy was kind of indirectly asked to join the band back in the day.
Yeah, we've spoken about that before.
And that's a fun thing. And I know you guys have so many Van Halen stories within your group, which is great. That's why you're so fun to talk about here on the show. But Billy, you know, it didn't work out for him. But let's just say back in the day, Dave's gone, Sammy comes in, Sammy goes, Gary Sharon's in the band. Let's just say the phone rang to your management camp sometime in that day, and they said, hey, Jeff, you know, maybe like to come and sing a couple songs with Ed. How would you have approached it? I'm assuming I'm just going to try to get inside your head. I would assume you're going to show up. You're going to do your thing, your style, not try to be Dave, not try to be Sammy. If that phone call ever came, how would you approach that gig? And I know we're typing hypothetical here, but I just want to see how you'd approach it.
Well, one of the questions I get often is, if you could sing for any band, which one would it be? And I always choose the top three. There were three bands that I always dreamed of being the front man to. One of them I became the front man to. Was in Journey. And that was one I always dreamed of fronting. Queen was another one, and that in its own right got close. Mm-hmm. And I've jammed a lot with Brian May and done that whole attempt. Mm-hmm. And the other one was Van Halen. But you bring up an interesting point, because there are three phases of Van Halen for all intents and purposes, sure, as far as the world knows and releases. And obviously the one I side for the most is the Roth end. I couldn't imagine doing what I do to Van Halen's music, because to me it wouldn't be Van Halen. Again, Sammy was able to do what he did and turned it into the Hagar version of Van Halen. I think I would ruin it. I think I would just, unless I was impersonating Roth, which I kind of have I've done a Roth impersonation since I was in cover bands, and people love when I do it. It's quite fun. But especially singing the songs live. If I went and jammed with the guys and we just started doing stuff from the first few albums, I couldn't help it. I'd be singing it like Dave, because I couldn't help myself.
Sure.
I couldn't hear my boys singing those songs unless I was trying to do Dave's impersonation or his take on it. So, to be honest with you, as thrilling, as exciting as it would be, I might turn it down, because I would feel that I wouldn't be the right factor.
Right. Unless
they wanted me to do, the first 6 albums and sing them like Roth. I think it would be a strange way to try to get into the band.
I get it.
The first time we ever jammed with Sons of Apollo, it was the night of the memorial of my recently passed bass player David Z. Mm-hmm. We played the Ultimate Jam in LA, and we played "And the Cradle Will Rock."
A real loss too, by the way. Yes.
And there's no other way to sing that song. You gotta sing it with the same swag and the same kind of jive and silliness of David Lee Roth. Otherwise, it's just like, "And the cradle will rock." Yeah. It won't be the same way. So I kind of respect Sammy for not wanting to do the Roth songs live when they had to make that decision. They did a couple of them, the really big ones, because they had to, and everything else was concentrated on the newer version of Van Halen. You put the shoe on the other feet. There's no way Dave could sing anything that Sammy did, because he's not that kind of singer.
That's right.
And use that excuse, I'm not going to sing that dude's songs, for that reason. He doesn't want to look like a fool.
That's right.
I love Dave so much, but it would sound wrong unless he was singing them like Sammy, and vice versa. So that's kind of my take on. It's a long-winded reply on if I got the call, but that's my honest opinion.
That's awesome, and that would be respected too by the camp. It'd be respected by the fans. So very, very cool. And as you were telling me about your David Lee Roth impression, I was thinking in the back of my head, okay, now who told me? I knew it was one of the three. It wasn't Derek, so I'm narrowing it down. It was Ron that told me that you do a really cool. Maybe it was Billy too, but I know it wasn't Derek, so it's one of those two.
I've done it with Billy before, so it might have been Billy.
Probably was.
We did Light Up the Sky once at the Jam, and man, that was fun.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. And then another night we did "And the Cradle Will Rock" with Phil X, who's another VH aficionado, and he and I, we could sit in the room and just a campfire and play Van Halen songs all night. But I know everyone, he knows everyone and I heard Ron's the same. You name a song, he starts playing it in the right key, the right notes.
Yep.
It's pretty fascinating.
He did a little ID for me, like as you did tonight as well too, and he did one playing "Take Your Whiskey Home," and he's singing great voice too. He's got a great voice, doesn't he? Yeah,
I love it.
Very sassy voice.
so excited to play with these guys because everything you said about them earlier, they are the level of the best of the best. And people keep dropping that moniker supergroup. We don't like it. We don't like the fact, we don't want to be seen or known as a supergroup. But if you're going to use it in the pretense of we are above each other's standards. I mean, everybody's as good or better on their instrument as the last person in the band. And that's where I see us as a super group in that sense. These guys are just, I almost feel like, do I belong here? I mean, look around you in the room. I mean, these guys are monsters. So the fact that Mike Portnoy asked me to be in this band is a huge validation to what I've done in my career and what I've done in my life, that he's actually trusted me. He respects and trusts me to front this band and say, you're leading the charge. You're going to take this band into the next wave of what we're going to do together. I mean, that's huge for me.
It is. And you know what? I'm going to jump a little out of context just because we're on a perfect topic right now. We're going to come back to a few more Van Halen questions, but this is something I was going to ask later in the evening. And the fact that it's, first of all, like you're asking yourself, okay, do I deserve to be here? And I know you take that in. You're like, okay, this is really weird. And then all of a sudden, then you reckon, okay, well, no, I earned it. Or Mike would have asked me if I don't belong here, so I've earned it. So now I'll do my thing. And I was joking with you off the air how I look at the record. Like, I've been listening to this record to death. Derek gave me a pre-screening copy long before it dropped, and so I could get in the zone with it. And for his interview, I bought it, the pre-order before it came in, so I'm a fan. And I listened to it, and I'm driving in the car the other day with my son, who's a major rock fan of all styles. And I said to him, okay, now listen to Billy's part. Okay, and I rewinded again. I said, now listen to Ron's part. Okay, now listen close to Jeff. Jeff's coming on the show tomorrow. Listen to his vocals. So what my point is of that, I think fans, as an investment in this record, it's, you know, like when you play video games, or certain video games that give you a replay factor and a fun factor again and again and again sometimes, or a limited shelf. It's like, okay, I listened to it. That's neat. You probably never play it again. With your record, I look at it, and this might sound funny to some of the fans, but I look at it as a Quentin Tarantino film. Even though if you're not a fan of his, but he likes to get into perspective into each person's mind so you can see the camera through their eyes. I think this record, you're going to get so much replay value because you're going to listen to it just for Billy. And then you're going to come back again. Okay, now you're going to almost isolate Billy. You're going to hear just Derek.
That's cool.
Yeah, and you every one of you guys gets that. And you get a different experience each time you listen to it. And people can say, oh, you can do that with Van Halen too. Sure, you can. You can do it with just about any band. I'm not saying you guys are the only ones that can do it. But there is the replay value on Psychotic Symphony that I think just gives you that. It's very cool. I guess that's my point.
Awesome. Thanks for that. That's a great analogy. And I've actually used that perspective, especially on this particular record, because there's so much information. I mean, when I was playing it to friends before it got released, I mean, we were under strict orders to not pass it out, don't share it, because obviously with the whole downloading illegal thing going on, they're really afraid that people would get their hands on it before. But I would play this to really close friends, and they would be exhausted. They'd say, dude, I feel like we just did an hour at the gym. I'm exhausted. There's so many notes and so much information to soak in. So for an album like this, your analogy totally works, because there is so much you want to go back and just hone in on particulars instead of it's an incredible piece of work on that alone. My vocals, to me, they're more of the anchor. They kind of level off all the incredibleness that's going on underneath all those songs.
Yeah, it's good. And Derek said too, when you guys were when they were looking for you, when they're looking for the singer, there's big shoes to fill. Each of those guys in that band, like take you out of the equation for a second, the music's laid down, the foundation's laid down. Now we got to find a guy, or girl, or whoever, to fill the spot. And, you know, it wasn't just an easy position. So obviously you brought something very, very special to the table. And, you know, Mike could choose anybody he wants on the planet.
I think about that all the time. I mean, there's a multitude of people they could have brought in. And I'm so fortunate they decided to choose me, because now I feel as though I am the only singer for this band because of what we created. As much as Derek is the only keyboardist, and as much as Billy's the only bass player, everything about this is... You factored in everybody's roles in what we created here, and that to me is why that album works so well.
I think so, and I really think people had some high expectations going into this. You know, when Mike announced this and everyone's talking about it, and then it came out, and some people were like, "Okay, what? I'm sure it's going to be good." And all of a sudden, you know, when Mike and Derek went overseas to do the press tour there, I mean, I saw the reviews coming in from that alone. I mean, those guys were busy. I think Derek said he did almost like 500 different interviews and videos. It was that many. There's been nothing but praise. So whatever it is, the nucleus that works in there, the 5 of you guys, it works phenomenal. I'm going to jump over the chat real quick, say hi to a bunch of people. We're going to come back and do a couple more Van Halen questions. So
right on.
Over in the chat, we've got some of our regulars. Got Justin Guerrero, Quentin James jumping in. And this is cool. Justin Guerrero says, is it me or does Jeff kind of look like a younger Kirk Hammett with sunglasses? I don't know. Maybe.
Am I wearing sunglasses?
No.
Hang on. No?
No, but...
Well, it's probably because we're both Spanish. We both have curly hair,
never
and
know.
we're both very good looking.
That's right. There you go. Jack J. Martin says, hey, Eric, you did it 4K. I hit 4,000 subscribers here on the channel yesterday, and I got to contribute. Thank you. I got to contribute that to Sons of Apollo. There's been so much Sons of Apollo talk lately. Your camp has been sending a lot of traffic this way, so kudos to all you guys. Les Bellins jumping in says, hi, rockers, Eric and Jeff. Mike Racing, hi, gang. Darren Moore, rock and roll, who's from your school of rock of the David Lee Roth era, loves Dave. Says, hello, Mr. Soto, the biggest VH fan. Yeah, so I labeled you as the biggest fan in the band, so you have to prove that tonight. And I think you just might, although Billy has more street cred, he says, from playing with more members.
Billy wins on that front alone just because, I mean, he's jammed with every member of Van Halen at some point in his life. And that's automatically, that's a default win.
Yep.
And to this day, I know we're jumping around here. I've still yet to meet Eddie Van Halen, and that's the craziest thing when you think I've never met Eddie or Alex.
Wow.
I think I met Alex for a nanosecond, but it wasn't a proper introduction. Yeah. I've gotten to be really good friends with Mikey. I've met Sammy a multitude of times, but never met Eddie. It's the strangest thing ever, and I almost don't want to because you kind of keep that mystique of everything that you remember him as a kid. I've seen him go through the different phases of his life, through the alcohol and the health issues and all that. And those things start kind of pulling and ruining your image of the people. Mm-hmm. But sometimes when you actually meet them, it can destroy it completely. Yep. I don't want that element of my fanboydom with Eddie Van Halen to ever be tarnished.
That's right. And I think you're in a good place now because if that opportunity arises, because he could not be healthier now, happier than heck. But here's some wishful thinking. Festivals in 2018, we'll talk about this too. I know we're putting the cart before the horse, but Sons of Apollo on some festival dates in 2018. Van Halen on some festival dates in 2018. Are they touring? Who knows? But hey, that could happen. Cross paths that way. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Yes. So Jack, you know what? Billy's not here, so he can't defend himself. So you're the biggest Van Halen fan here tonight, as far as the show goes. How about that?
Perfect.
Sorry, Billy.
I'll take it.
All right, Billy will razz you later. You got it for sure. And I gotta put a bug in your ear. I'm gonna remind you about this too. If you guys do any jams, sound checks, any kind of stuff like that, and you do anything Van Halen wise, and you have it recorded, you got my contact information. Send it to me. I want to hear it. All right. So continue down through the chat. Justin Grady says, nice shirt. Jack Shea Martin says, hey, everyone. Is it Cyclone?
Got to see the back.
Oh, wicked.
Look at that. It's an actual tool shirt.
That is bad ass personified.
Right on.
Cyclone says, hi, guys. Mr. Jeff Scott Soto, what a legend. Craig Guitar Wannabe says, hey there. Dan Wilhite saying, what's up, guys? Olympus Rock Video says, hey, hello, Eric and Jeff. Let me see here. What else am I missing? Martin Barr says, cheers from Switzerland and the biggest Sons of Apollo fan. Keep up the great work.
Switzerland.
Love Jeff Scott Soto since the first Yngwie J. Malmsteen. By the way, it's 2:09 a.m. on my end. So we have a trooper, not only missing baseball, which is over in his part of the world now, 2:09, so thank you. And he's been following me on Twitter. He said some real nice things as well, too. He had said something, I think you saw that tweet. Basically, he hadn't even heard of my show 2 weeks ago. Now he's seeing some interviews with his biggest fans.
Right.
Yeah. So Justin Grady says, what's up? Your guitar is awesome. Oh, we're talking about Craig. I'll get down to the end here. David Ennis is jumping in saying, hi, Eric and Poison Ivy. That's my better half, Poison Ivy, and Mr. Soto. All right, here we go. This is a good one. And this is an Yngwie question, and you may not even know this. I mean, I know you worked with him closely. Actually worked for him, as you put. It's a good one, right? Working with.
I'm glad you caught that one.
Worked for, yes. There's a difference between working with people and working for people when you are basically made to feel that way. But we won't go down that path. Craig says, ask Jeff why Yngwie used to mock Eddie and try to play a part of Eruption with his teeth during solo. And I've even seen him play Eruption and then yawn. Is that?
Yeah, it was. He respected him. He knew what Eddie stood for, but because he was the new gunslinger in town when he came out, he wanted to show people, well, I can play Eruption with my teeth. It's so easy. Mm-hmm. And it didn't mean any disrespect. It was more or less, Yngwie was a cocky kid back then, and it was just basically just showing off. but he didn't mean any disrespect to Eddie by any stretch, and he knows what Eddie represented and stood for. So I think it could have been taken out of context, as a lot of what Yngwie says and does, but I don't think it was done out of mockery by any sense. It was more like, well, I can do that with my teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, it can get blown out of proportion. And here's something too. This was a question. This is gonna be fun tonight. I like this. I like when we can actually weave in and out of my planned itinerary.
Sure.
So there, Yngwie, I respect him as a guitar player. I can't play like him. When he first came out, with the stuff that you did together, I learned a little tiny bit. Enough that I could say I could play a couple licks, and that was it. But he's in the recent press. He hasn't really shown any love for any singer, not just you. Any singer out there, he doesn't really need the singers. He writes the melodies and all that kind of stuff. But I like to always put a positive spin on everything on the show. What is something about the business? Or just your time with Yngwie in that band, writing, performing, touring, selling records, press, any of that stuff that you've took away as a positive experience?
Well, the main thing I would have to say is it was my humble beginning. I mean, I started my career with Yngwie. That was the launching of anything Jeff Scott Soto, and from that, I'm forever grateful. There were conditions and terms that were not that great. The way we were treated, the way we were not treated, there were so many factors that definitely drew away from the experience. But the fact that even listening now and going back to those records and just reflecting back, we created history. We created our own brand of history. We had no idea we would be leaving such a stamp on the world, that we realized Yngwie was becoming such. But to this day, when I walk into a club and Sebastian Bach's sitting at the other end of the club and he just starts singing "I'm a Viking" at the top of his lungs, that's something I was able to leave behind. Even though I didn't write the song, Yngwie wrote it, but that's my voice, that's my stamp that was given to somebody else, a young Sebastian Bach growing up as a singer, or a young other singer, or just a fan. They remember this the same way I remember Van Halen in my younger years. So that to me is the biggest and best thing I could have taken away from my experience with Yngwie.
It's perfect. And as much as Yngwie may not care to admit it, there are people that are drawn to his band at the time, not just for the guitar playing. Some people are going to go there. They don't know anything about guitar. It could be the wives. It could be boyfriends or whatever. But they're there because they have, this is a great singer. Who's this Jeff Scott Soto guy? This guy's great. He's playing with this crazy guitar player. They could be there for you as well too. So humble beginnings. It's a great step on your career. So I think all of us can reflect back to something. There's some times that weren't the most pleasurable, but look at what's the takeaway from it? Well, this is great, and you'll never forget it. So that's awesome. You
got to understand, when you're growing up in high school and you're in all the cover bands and even your first few original bands, you're in high school. You're going through your schooling years, and you finally get to the end of high school and you're getting ready for the real world. I graduated from high school and joined Yngwie. That was the beginning of my career. So it was truly like going back to kindergarten. It was like starting over. Now this is the beginning of your life, even though the beginning of your life is when you started school or when you started your first few bands. This was a whole nother, barrel of bananas. And it was bananas. It was absolutely nuts. The shit that we experienced going through and the things that we saw, on top of the fact that when you go into a situation like this, you read Hit Parader magazine and Metal Edge and Circus magazine, you see what you think is supposed to be making it big. And then when you experience it yourself, like, that has nothing to do with what I'm experiencing right now, has nothing to do with all the things that you see and read in magazines when we were growing up, or even see on an album cover. This is completely unrelatable. I don't know if I like this, but the music to us, it's in our blood, it's in our DNA. It's all we know. It's all we want to know. So you roll with the punches, you learn everything you need to learn, and you start making your own experiences through life. And that's the only way I could have gotten through any of this. And that was my biggest factor in playing with Yngwie. It taught me early on, I got to learn the business.
Yes.
Because I was being trampled on, I was being used and abused, I was signing things that were totally to my disadvantage. And once I realized I'm screwed, I can't continue being screwed, I started learning the business. That's the biggest lesson I can teach anybody, is to learn what you're signing, learn what the business represents, learn what a royalty is, what a publishing royalty is, how the splits are, learn all that stuff, because even if it's not fair, even if in the end you sign a bogus deal, at least you know you're signing a bogus deal.
Exactly.
You know that you're not going to make you're going to make $1 instead of making $10,000 from royalties or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to know the business. That's one of the biggest lessons I learned from being with Yngwie.
That's perfect, and that's a very good one. I'm glad that's one we can focus on, because even bands like we're talking about tonight, Van-Halen, were royally screwed. It was great. I mean, they were signed basically on one guy, on Eddie Van Halen. Warner Brothers, Ted wanted him for him, and the rest of the rest of the packages will make that work. But they got screwed. They didn't know about it till later on. They didn't know till Noel Monk come in as their manager that there could be some money made in merchandising. And sometimes when you look at some of these bands and you think that, okay, this person's being hard on this person's being hard over there, it is business decisions. And I think that's why it's important on both sides of that fence to have as much business knowledge as possible, especially in today's society where the deals aren't like they used to be. The labels aren't beating down the doors. There's hardly any labels around. So when you do get the opportunity, be ready, have those tools in your toolkit, have a business degree, have a marketing degree, or at least skills. I shouldn't say degrees. Go get a good degree if you can, but at least have those skills so that when the vultures come, to pick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's nobody wants to do that. I mean, when you want to be a rock star, you want to concentrate on the partying, the writing the songs,
Sure.
practicing, honing on your craft. But that other stuff is just as important. And you really got to, as boring as it is, it seems like you're going back to school and now I got to educate and learn this. You have to. Yeah. As much as you want to play and sing and party and hang and do all those things that are factored into being a rock star, that other stuff is just as important, if not more important.
Mm-hmm. And look at it this way too. Let's just say, God forbid, that your initiatives going into music don't pan out. Like the odds are more against us today, but they don't pan out. You got a nice education to fall back on. That is certainly nothing to laugh at. And you might have a good career for your family, and support your family.
I love it. Like even John Levin, the guitar player with Dokken, mm-hmm. he's the attorney for Dokken. He's got his law degree. He's this guy with long hair, shredding guitar player, plays all of George Lynch's licks note for note. And this guy can take anybody down in court. It's the best thing ever. I mean, talk about the double whammy.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I love it. I didn't know he was a lawyer. So that's an interesting new fact. Jump back over to chat very briefly. Jay's Tacos and Guitars, a great friend of mine, has a great channel doing tacos and guitars. He says, hello, Eric and Jeff. And this is cool. Sometimes fans come to the show and they don't know some of my guests and they discover it. And I'm very happy to introduce musicians to new fans and vice versa. So Jeff says, I have to admit, I'm new to Sons of Apollo. Thank you to Eric and the show for introducing me to Sons of Apollo. I love your voice and the album slams. I had it cranked all day. Very nice.
Nice. Thank you for that.
Good.
And the idea of tacos and guitars, I'm intrigued.
There you go. I'll send you an email to his channel. You got to check it out. You'll enjoy it. Let me see. Can't pronounce this one. This is a weird name. I'm gonna call him GK. Is that okay? Because it's a series of letters and numbers. GK says Jeff is the real Viking.
Yes.
Nice.
I am a Viking.
Here's one. Does Jeff look forward to the new WT album? Is it going to be that he's going to be collaborating on?
It is done. We just turned it into the label with the artwork and everything. It's coming out late February, I believe. So just as the Sons of Apollo tour, we're jumping ahead, begins, the new Wet album will be out at just the same.
Now, I'm new to that band, but I was reading a little bit on it. Is that an acronym for different members of the different groups?
Yes.
Okay.
There's three main partners and writers in the band, and one of them is in a band called Work of Art.
Okay.
The second primary writer is he's the singer and singer and songwriter for the band Eclipse, and my part comes in from the band Talisman. So we acronymed the hell out of those three names, and we came up with Wet for just to keep it simple, and we couldn't come up with anything better. And we've done 2 records. We've done a live DVD, and it's been a handful of years since the last CD, and Frontiers came to us and said, guys, clock is ticking. Mm-hmm. Contract says you owe us an album. So yeah, we made a great follow-up, and it's one of the busiest years of my life. I literally did Sons of Apollo. The day after I finished my last vocal, I started my new solo album, Retribution.
Nice.
The week after I finished Retribution, I started the Wet album. So it's back to back to back, 3 albums in a row. It wasn't by design that my solo album and Sons of Apollo were coming out 20 days from each other, but it just happened that way, and we're just doing the best we can to kind of juggle the promotional schedule behind it. And I'm not really too worried about it. I mean, Sons of Apollo's audience is going to be completely different from people who buy my solo records and vice versa. So
yeah,
I'm not too concerned with the cross-genre path there. And let's move on with the next question, because I know I'm going to start answering things before you ask.
Okay. No, that's totally fine. And if I had my choice, I would like to have that schedule that you have. I mean, sometimes you get a 3 or 4 month downtime. It's hard, you get accustomed to it, and then it's hard to get back into things. So you don't get off the bike, you just keep on riding. So that's awesome. Let me see here. So Justin says, well, he was talking about the sunglasses on the picture that you sent me. That's what he's referring to. So that's the picture of the thumbnail of the video. So you had the sunglasses on in that one. So there you go. Yeah. We have a guest joining in from Jairus Age. Greetings from La Paz, Bolivia. Thank you very, very much for tuning in.
From all around the world. I love this.
Oh, yeah. There's quite a few. This is another one. This is what I really like when it shows hard work pays off. Max Reverse says, Eric got turned on to Sons of Apollo from your channel. Psychotic Symphony is awesome. Awesome.
Nice.
Here's a big
Eric.
Thank you. Here's a longtime fan of yours, of Mike Portnoy's, Derek Shrinian's for sure. Jeff Azar is former drummer of mine and a good friend. He says, great work, Eric, from a fellow Jeff. Can't wait to see Sons of Apollo live. He's going to love you guys, as the world is for sure. And I was saying to each of the guys, I said, I can't wait. The record, we love it. I can't wait to see when you guys just improv and just go off the tracks a little bit, It's
going to be stupid. The worst part about a tour is the beginning, because you're finding your legs. The worst for me is I'm concentrating on making sure the voice is all right. I'm remembering the words. Where do I stand here when this is going on there? Once you find your groove, that's when the tour starts getting fun. That's when it starts getting fun playing with the guys. You start loosening up, and that's when the tour is truly going to kick in. And everybody, all my friends, I got to be there for the first show, the second show. I'm like, guys, I don't want you anywhere near the first half of the tour. I want you guys to see it when we've honed in, and you're going to watch one of the best things you've ever seen. Until then, stay home.
That's right. I'm going to go on the record right now. I'm going to just pick numbers out of the air, but I'm going to say tour night number 4 is going to make headlines all around the world. Wait and see. I have no psychic skills, psycho skills maybe, but not psychic skills.
Well, let's see if we can work out something with YouTube that anytime something that says Sons of or Apollo gets immediately pulled off until that 4th show.
There you go. All right, perfect. We'll get some filters out there for sure. Last few comments before I get to the next question. Jeremy Carter says, just jumped in. What's up, guys? Quentin James, by the way, 5-0 Houston. So baseball score.
I have the score in front of me.
Yeah.
It's hurting, but this is a nice distraction.
Okay,
so we're
good. So obviously, that's a little bit of pain. David N says, hey, Mark Taylor, and Spinky McAllister says, hey, Eric, great show. Okay, so back over to some Van Halen questions. So we talked about some of the things you learned in the business back with the Yngwie days. Anything that you've taken away from Van Halen, past, present, or whatever, about the business for them? Anything you've adopted in your career with any of the bands? It could be from David Lee Roth, command of the crowd, anything. Let me know.
Absolutely. That's the one I was going to factor in. I mean, not so much the business end, but as inspiration and influence, of course. Dave was the ultimate showman. He was the ultimate frontman. He was everything I wanted to be as a frontman, and I failed by massive comparison. The whole gift of gab thing, the whole funny factor of entertaining a crowd with just whatever you say is just so cool. You couldn't wait till he spoke, and all those things that you draw from, all those things you try to factor into your own show and your own personality. It was so important to get from Dave. He and Freddie Mercury were the 2 greatest frontmen of history, as far as I'm concerned. And Prince. I'll throw Prince in that equation because, again, these 3 guys knew they could entertain the last person at the top nosebleed seat of an arena as much as they're entertaining the ones in the front row. And that's a difficult thing to do when you think hang on a second.
That's okay.
Must have had a stranger walk by. That's very difficult to do as a front. That's one of the hardest things as a frontman to learn. You can be a great singer, you can be a great entertainer, but to try and be both,
it's hard.
And to try and keep that show flowing without stepping on the toes. Eddie Van Halen's doing the shredding guitar solo. You're not going to be going out there throwing T-shirts in the audience and distracting the crowd. Learning and honing in on becoming exactly that kind of frontman. That's one of the major things I got from Dave.
Yep.
And again, I fail in comparison to try to be as badass as David Lee Roth, but I took whatever little details I could, and you're going to see a lot of that even in the show aspect of Sons of Apollo. The funny thing I read recently, when we did our debut performance of "And the Cradle Will Rock," because I knew that song vocally more than I knew the song "Burn" that we also did that night.
Mm-hmm.
I when the music starts and that whole world just begins for me, I stop thinking about what I look like, what I'm doing. Everything just flows and happens. But then you start reading the comments. I think Jeff he looks like such a goofball, and I wish he wouldn't dance around. Why does he have to move like that? Does he think he's in Van Halen? You know.
No, you weren't thinking.
I don't even know what I'm doing. I transform because the music just takes me, and whether I look like an asshole or whether it looks cool, I don't know, and I don't care.
Right.
Because I'm just letting the music and what I'm doing dictate the moment, and that's one of the things I've always tried to do with everything, every performance and every band I've ever been in. I try to make sure that you feel what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to reserve that. I'm not going to pull it back. When I got into Journey, management actually pulled me aside, and that was one of the bands they actually factored into the conversation that night. My first show, they said, "Man, you sounded great last night. You were great, but you got to remember you're moving around too much. This is not Van Halen." They actually said that to me. This is Journey. It's a little more mature and more reserved, and you got to hone it down a little bit. So what I did is the same exact thing the next night, and I went to them afterwards. "Hey guys, I reserved myself. I pulled it back a lot. What do you think?" "Oh, that was 1,000 times better." I did the same show that night, the second night, the rest of the tour.
Yeah.
So it's just part of what I do and how I do it, and I factor that to David Lee Roth.
Perfect. And I like the fact how you say the comments will come in and they'll say, "What was Jeff thinking?" and "What was so-and-so thinking?" and "What was so-and-so thinking?" No, you weren't thinking. You were feeling, as you said. You felt the music come through.
Dave thinking? Dave did some cool stuff back in the day, and for all intents and purposes, it was new and it was different.
Mm-hmm.
And some might have thought, "Oh, man, that looks kind of fruity," or "That looks kind of weird," or whatever. But when he did it, he sold it. He believed in it, and he sold it.
Yep.
And if you believe it and sell it, that's all that matters.
That's right. Van Halen in the day was like Barnum and Bailey Circus. You had rings over here, and you had people falling from the ceiling. You had I'm not sure what the correct word is, the politically correct word, but little people, I would say, I think is the correct word. And please don't flame me if I said the wrong word. But they're bringing out bottles, and you got lights and smoke and mirrors. And he was the ringleader, and he pulled it together. Was he the greatest singer? No, he just pulled it together. And my analogy of a really good singer and a front man, and I think I'll say a front person more so than a singer, because sometimes it's not always the vocal talent. It's keeping that thing together. And there's a Canadian band that played on a smaller circuit one time, and the singer was really, really good. I pictured this as taking an imaginary lasso, a rope. If you don't know what a lasso is, the old Lone Ranger with a rope, lasso, pulling it around your audience and pulling them in. And, okay, I've got you, and I'm not letting you go for our 45-minute set. Okay, I'm done with you. Now you can go. And if you can hold that crowd, command them to have your attention, and then let them go, you got a real lucky person. You're a lucky band to have that guy or girl in your band.
That's Freddie Mercury was one of those guys.
Oh, you got that.
He would pull you in, and he would not let go until that last note. It's like, now we're free.
Yep. And you know what? Each of those guys in that band, Brian May, I love to death too as well. Obviously a good friend of Eddie Van Halen's. Love him to death as far as a guitar player. There were times I never got to experience Queen live, at least being in the stadium. But you could be there and you might realize, oh, there's actually 3 other guys in the band. You know what I mean? Right. That's kind of cool. So let's.
It's crazy how I've never met Eddie, but I'm really good friends with Steve Lukather and Brian May. How does that work?
I know. These friends are friends. It's gonna happen. It's gonna.
And
happen.
He doesn't live that far away from me, for Christ's sake.
Just go jogging one day and oops, I got to bend over to tie up my shoe. Whoops.
Yeah, I went into the supermarket or something.
That's right. So let's do a little bit of a twist here. You've done some work, quite a bit actually, tours with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. No, I've never seen them live. They've played close to me as well.
Sure.
But I like that. And because of that style of music, I discovered another style of music. Gary Hoey is one of my idols. I love him to death. He's been on the show a couple of times, and now he's become a friend. But I would like to say I knew Gary's whole catalog, but I discovered him through his Christmas music, Ho Ho Hoey, and he's been so successful with that. Introduced through a local radio station close to me in Detroit. That's how I become a fan. So I think what's really cool, first of all, you do a commendable job with that. Not even an average job or a good job. You do a phenomenal job with that.
Thank you.
And I think it might help fans See, fans sometimes might, maybe the moms and dads will take their kid to the show, or maybe just moms and dads go to the show, and they think, man, this Jeff guy's really got some pipes. Go home, Google Jeff Scott Soto. Oh, I see a catalog like this. Let's go do some YouTubing. And they discover your back catalog. How do you think that has worked for you in your favor for making new fans come in and discovering your back catalog?
Well, it's the same as your show itself. I mean, there are people watching your show or listening to your show right now that probably never heard of me or thought they didn't know who I was. Oh, I didn't know he was that guy or sang on that. It's the same thing. We're all just kind of passing it and paying it forward. Mm-hmm. People are discovering me through your show. I'm discovering people through your show. People are discovering me through TSO. And it's one just big sharing process, because that's what music is. We're all sharing the thing that makes us happy, that completes us, and that is music. So, of course, it's a beautiful thing. It's a positive thing. But in the end, it's if I can make one person happy and one person becomes a fan from what I'm doing out of thousands, then I've done my job.
I love that. Yep. Baby steps. I say this here in the house all the time too. And enjoy the small things. I say this here in the house here with my better half, Sandra. I say you got to look at life and focus on the little things, and don't try to please a million fans. You make one fan happy that night, and you'd be surprised the volume of one person. Yeah,
I'll give you a backstory that probably, I don't know if not many people know it, because we're on the Trans-Siberian thing. Al Petrelli is one of my dearest friends, and he was one that got me in to TSO. I don't know if it's documented that Al was actually suggested to Dave by Steve Vai, and went down to Dave's house, and he was supposed to be in the band, and at the same time got the offer to because they weren't sure exactly when they were going to start and how things were going to start panning out. He just knew he wanted Al in the band. And then Al got the call to be the musical director and guitar player for Alice Cooper. Wow. And so it was like apples and oranges, but these oranges seemed to outweigh the apples, so he went with the Cooper thing. But Al Petrelli of TSO might have actually put his stamp on a David Lee Roth thing, and it just never transpired. I think just before Becker joined the band, we all know how that ended up, unfortunately, because, again, another ridiculously talented guitar player stricken by, the whole ALS thing. But, just a little tidbit thrown in, tying in the whole DLR thing with Al Petrelli and TSO.
I love that. Here's a very, very good question from a fan, from Dan Wilhite. He's a good friend and a regular here on the show. This is a phenomenal question. And he says, hey, Jeff, who thought of the name Sons of Apollo? It's an awesome band name, very fitting.
There's actually a video, kind of a video documentary on that, where it might even be on the one where we're all sitting together. There's a few of them out there where Mike and Derek discussed that. It started with Mike's diary on his phone of all these band names, because, as everybody knows, Mike Portnoy is in like 1,700 bands. So when he's into doing something new, they need, every time he comes up, he hears a cool name or something that might sound like a cool band, and he jots it down. It's got this master list.
Yep.
So they were writing the songs, and it was one of these days that he and Derek were hanging out. And, hey, we need to come up with a band name. And he goes, hey, I got the list. So they're going through everything, and the word Apollo was on there by itself. And so they thought, I bet there's 1 trillion Apollos already, so let's not tread that. But maybe if we add something to it, and even the word or the term Apollo Creed was thought, but they thought there might be some litigation there, so let's step away from that. But it was Derek that came up with the Sons of Apollo, because he factored in the fact that we're all the sons of the god of music, which is Apollo. So it was a cool way to kind of twist that we are not the gods of music, but we are the sons of the gods of music. And we're no spring chickens, we're all in 50 above in this band, but by being the sons of, I think we can get away with it, as opposed to being cocky or 18-year-olds trying to use that moniker.
Yep. It's keeping it real. It's humble for sure, and that is a great story. I remember him sharing that story. That's awesome. Quentin James says video the shows, and that's what a lot of bands are doing. They video. He says learn to put on a good show and watch it back, and that's good. You can watch some things back, and you might look at yourself and say, "Oh my God, I actually did that." But again, you're caught in a moment, right? But you can learn from the videos, like a football coach.
Be the most painful part about the upcoming Sons of Apollo tours. I'm gonna look at myself, and I'm gonna say, "Oh no, why did I do that? Why am I there?" So you should learn your craft. And one of the things I know about David Lee Roth, that he was pretty much a creature of habit. he was the perfect frontman when you saw them live, because every night on stage was the event of the year. And everything he said, you thought he was saying just for you, but you didn't realize he was using the same things he was saying night after night, because they worked. They were effective. From that, I just got hit with a roll of toilet paper. That's all right, because I'm going to F your girlfriend.
That's right.
All that stuff was stuff that worked night after night after night. But it made you feel like he wrote and said that just for you. I forgot the fucking words, man. Mm-hmm. All that stuff was important key factors to David Lee Roth. But when it worked, he held on to it, and he made a living out of that whole thing. You got to find something that works for you. You get, whether it's shtick, whether it's sideshow, or whether it's just being a serious kick-ass musician, and you hone in on it and you make it the most effective you can.
That's right. And not to take away from videotaping and looking at yourself and saying, "Oh my God, that was ridiculous." There's also times where you do something right. The guitar player just does something that's phenomenal. You do something that you do a jump at a certain song, and you high five one of the guys, and it becomes a shtick every night. Okay, make a note. That worked. Let's do that again. It's not always a negative that you're taking away. There are some positives, hopefully, or else you're doing it wrong. Yeah. Right? Awesome.
Absolutely.
Next question I want to ask is a little bit more about your formal training. I do hear in some of the tracks, is one track called Labyrinth? Is that yeah, okay, it's Labyrinth. The vocal on that is just amazing, and I kind of feel, I mean, it's good all throughout the whole album, but that's not what I'm trying to say. If I feel a bit of soul kind of background in your music and in your vocal style. Did you have formal training? And on another note, who were some of your other influences, maybe that we might not expect growing up?
I never had formal training aside of just the radio, aside of listening and impersonating all my favorite artists. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and in trying to sing Van-Halen songs like myself. I can't help it. I sing like David Lee Roth when I sing those songs. Mm-hmm. Growing up, impersonation to me was my teacher, because I couldn't hear the song sung by somebody else. Therefore, I couldn't sing it like myself. I would try to sing like that person. And by honing into all the different inspirations and influences of the stuff I listened to growing up, I was able to then find my own me somewhere in there. I grew up listening to mainly R&B, soul music. I listened to only the Motown thing. Michael Jackson, the ABC Jackson 5 album was the first album I ever bought. I only listened to soul music all the way until the late 70s. The Bee Gees was one of my biggest favorite bands of all time when I was a teenager. Nice. I listened to The Temptations. Sam Cooke is one of my favorite singers. Jackie Wilson. That's all I listened to. To me, when rock came out, and it even took a couple albums of Van Halen until I crossed over. I didn't get into the first two albums until much later. It wasn't until a band like Toto came along, and you can hear the soul and Bobby Kimball almost sounded like an R&B black singer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He didn't sound like this white dude singing in a rock band. Mm-hmm. And unless you saw the videos, you didn't know that Bobby Kimball was white.
That's right.
Because it sounded like an R&B singer with a distorted guitar underneath it. And that's what got me into rock. Toto was the first. Journey was the next, because Steve Perry had that white soul. Steve Perry grew up with the same influences as me. And that's why it was important for me to do the same honor to those songs when I was in Journey. I knew where he got that influence from that made those Journey songs. And anybody else that would sing after him wouldn't have that same schooling as I did. Right. And I'm not saying I'm better than them, or I just knew the element and the essence of where he got that style, and he put it in those great songs. I think that was an important key factor to Portnoy, because knowing that most prog singers they're either on the higher range or higher register. There's no prog singers that actually have soul. Like there's a soulful R&B swag to them, and that's one of the terms that Derek and Mike use a lot with me, especially when we were creating the melodies. They said this has got to have swag, and we put a lot of swag left, right, and center on this album. And that swag is my middle name. It just comes from my influences of all the things I grew up with. And that's, again, we were talking about that with the whole David Lee Roth and the swag and soulfulness of Van Halen. Mm-hmm. They come from that school of the old Motown beats, the way they used to lay down certain grooves. All we did was we souped them up and rocked them up, and that's exactly what we're doing now. But it all comes from that area. It comes from that the black music, the soul music that was just so influential to the world we owe so much to that music in everything that we're doing now, except bands like Slayer and stuff like that. There's not much R&B influence.
No.
But in general, the bands that were able to take that swing and put it into rock, that's exactly where it all came from. And that's what led me into Van Halen's world. Once I got past the fact that Eddie Van Halen was the most ridiculous guitar player on the planet, you started now seeing all the other factors that made Van Halen what they were. Dance the Night Away. It was a poppy kind of R&B smooth rock song. It was nothing like I'm the One or Atomic Punk. It was just such an extreme difference with this band, and they pulled it off, and they made you believe it.
I love it. And it's not that Mike and Derek were sitting there looking, analyzing on paper when you come to the band for auditions, or not even real auditions, but as a prospective singer, they're not looking on paper and looking at the resume and things like that. But if they were, certainly looking at a resume of influences that you have, a recipe book, we'll say, is a lot different than a guy showing up and saying, yeah, I like Robert Plant and Roger Daltrey, and great guys, but look what you brought. You know what I mean?
And maturity. I think that was important, that they knew they were getting somebody that, we were talking about that earlier off the record. I did some shows with my band Soto opening up for Winery Dogs. Mm-hmm. And I've known Mike Portnoy through just, meeting him at shows backstage, and we're jamming at an appearance thing or whatever. But he never really focused or paid attention. He wasn't sitting on YouTube looking for a singer. No. It just happened that when we were doing that tour, he was going, hang on a second, there's something here. Hey, Derek, remember that band we were talking about doing? I think I found our singer. And everything just fell the way it was supposed to put this thing together. If we didn't do that tour with him, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about Sons of Apollo right now.
I know, it's awesome.
Everything factored in the way it did based on the circumstances. And going back, Mike knew that my influences weren't just I'm a metal singer, I'm a screamer, and that's all I come from. Mm-hmm. He knows that I come from a whole history of different styles and different versatile selection of music. So he knew that I was going to be able to bring that into this and give something a little different than if they just got some guy that's known for singing in prog bands.
Worked perfectly. So they made a great choice. There's no question about it. That's
Thank
awesome.
You.
Here's a question for you. So you answered one question earlier about, your answer could have been this. I was going to ask you, who's a musician that you haven't had the opportunity, or it could even be a couple of musicians. A musician will say that you've had not the opportunity to play with that you would love to someday. We'll take Eddie Van Halen out of the equation now, but just someone, that you would love to cross paths, whether it's a guest spot, maybe like just at a concert, maybe it would be a recording. You can name anybody.
Well, I think I already did earlier. I've always wanted to be in a band with Mike Portnoy and Billy Sheehan, and now I am. The fact that I'm in the same band with them. I've always wanted to be in a band with them separately, but now collectively we're together. I can actually run down the line of how I know these guys too, because I know we're going to discuss this.
Yeah.
Mike was one I've met just a handful of times, but we'd never had any experience playing together, and really there was always the missing factor of, hey, check me out. Hey, check me out. I think we could do something together. We always missed those channels. Billy, I've known for the better part of the beginning of my career. Billy was in Tallis that opened up for the Yngwie Malmsteen summer tour, not back in 1985. And right when I was cutting my teeth, I was introduced to this phenomenon that is Billy Sheehan, not even knowing that he was stepping into the David Lee Roth world after that tour was done. But getting to know Billy back then since 1985, we've known each other a long time, and every year or every decade or cycle that I see him going from DLR to Mr. Big to Winery Dogs, I'm like, oh God, when is it going to be my turn? I want to do something with Bill. Derek, it's kind of like Mike. We've known each other through the certain circles. Derek went to Berkeley with Al Petrelli, so they're best friends. They're still best friends to this. I think they talk like every other day. So that's my connection with Derek, aside of the fact that Derek was with Yngwie Malmsteen for a short time. Mm-hmm. And Bumble was the last one. I met Bumblefoot, was it this year? I think it was this year on the Monsters of Rock cruise. I'd only seen him play once with Guns N' Roses, and I wasn't really paying attention to the show because we were there with a bunch of TSO bandmates and mm-hmm. some of the crew, and we were just talking a lot. And they're like, oh, welcome to the jungle. Okay, time to go. I didn't know the alien that is Bumblefoot until we recorded this album. And then I started back cataloging him because this guy is probably one of the most insane guitar players I've ever seen or played with in my life. There are no words I can put it. The way I felt about Eddie Van Halen when I was young is how I feel about Bumblefoot now. And those are big shoes to fill and replace at this age when I played with a lot of greats. And I in general, my career hasn't seen any slouch in guitar players.
Nope.
Ron he's just another world. He's a force to be reckoned with. And I think he's the true star of the Sons of Apollo album. So going back to what you were saying, which I've completely forgotten now, it's just an incredible feeling to know that these guys are going to be alongside me. You know, Mike's going to be watching my ass every night, going up there and trying to be David Lee Roth Jr. And it's just an intense feeling that I'm in this band.
It's got to be good for all the guys as well too. I mean, they've all played in super fantastic groups. But I think actually I asked Darren this. Derek, I keep saying Darren. I don't know why I say that. I said this to Derek.
It's okay. Sometimes I say Bumblefish. I keep thinking of the movie Rumblefish. And
yep. And I almost wanted to call you guys Sons of Anarchy. I almost did that a couple times.
Yeah. There's that one.
But,
and then of course Bumble's got his other band, Art of Anarchy.
That's why.
Oh God, you guys are killing me right now.
That's exactly why I was going to do it, because when I was researching some things for the show with Ron, I kept thinking Art of Anarchy. Don't say Sons of Anarchy. But if they did a cross tour, it could have been the Sons of Anarchy tour. You know what I mean? So nothing could be worse, I guess. But another question I had for you too was Vinnie Vincent. I did not know this until recently. I mean, I tried to research as much as possible, but this was just a fact. I just discovered that you did some work with Vinnie Vincent. And I wasn't a huge Kiss fan during the Vinnie era. I mean, he did write some good songs. Just wasn't my thing. I'm an Ace Frehley guy through and through. I'm sorry, I just am. But you did some work with them. And what my question is, and a lot of fans may not know that. So first, tell us a little bit about your work with Vinnie. And then the second follow-up question to that is, being that he's going to be doing the KISS convention now, which is crazy news in 2018, do you think we may see Vinnie back on the scene, so to speak?
God, I hope so. I mean, he's been so removed for so long, and to be without a single trace, like Vito Bratta, I mean, great guitar players and phenomenal talents to just disappear like that is, especially because I know how passionate Vinnie was and is about music. To just be gone and just completely vanish from the scene for so long, it sucks. This was back in '87. I was doing an album with a Japanese guitar guy named Kuni, and the producer of that album was Dana Strum.
Okay.
And we were booked over at Cherokee Studios in Los Angeles, and Dana was doing double duties. He was doing both albums simultaneously in two different rooms at the studio. So he would start the early part of his day doing the Cooney record. Once we would break, he'd have dinner, and then Vinnie would come in. They were doing the All Systems Go album, the second album.
Wow.
With Slaughter. They brought me in to do some backgrounds for the album, and once I got to talking to Vinnie, he realized that exactly what we spoke of, that I come from that whole R&B school, which he does as well. If you look at Vinnie's catalog of songs he's written for other people, it has nothing to do with rock, nothing to do with Kiss or that sound. He's written disco songs, he's written pop songs, he's written Celine Dion kind of songs. And knowing that with me, he had some demos that he had to turn into his publishing company of, it was like 4 or 5 songs, but he didn't want a rock singer. Because first thing I thought, why don't you get Slaughter to sing it? And he said, no, it's got to be soulful, almost Michael Bolton-y R&B kind of thing, and I know you got that kind of voice based on your influences. So Vinnie just had these songs demoed up in his home studio. I went down there within a course of a few days, and we just knocked him out. Now these demos are floating around the internet. Everybody thinks or thought that was a new band or new project, and none of the above. It was just he'd written some songs. When you have a publishing deal with a company, a publishing house, you owe them a certain amount of songs per year that they then take and place with other artists. It's how it works. They give you a nice, healthy advance to live on, and you turn in songs. These happened to be 5 of those songs, and he wanted the right voice to I guess, for them to hear the songs. And that's all it was. You know, it was great because very complimentary, but he had a vision of how they're supposed to sound. And when I listen back now, I cringe because I could sing circles around them now based on what I've learned and what I know. But it was a great experience. Vinnie was sweet as pie, was the nicest guy ever. And again, it goes back to what I was saying. I wish he was still somewhat active in doing what he was brought here to do. He's such a talented guy. I wasn't a big fan of the Invasion albums, mainly because I thought his playing, he wanted to be the guitar hero.
Yeah, overdoing it.
Kiss put a leash on him. They wouldn't let him shred. That's not what Kiss is about.
Mm-hmm.
So he took it to the extreme, and his level of shredding was a lot of nonsensical notes and things that just like, oh God, it just sounds like none of the notes really make sense. It just sounds like he's just playing a lot of fast
12
notes.
different languages at one time.
Yeah. And I get he was trying to have that come across, but I thought he lost the guitar hero thing from me because he could have done so much better if he wasn't trying to chase that dragon.
Yeah, I'd like to see him come back out with a blues record or something. And let's just see what this convention holds next year. First of all, number one, hopefully he shows up. I think he will.
Awesome.
Show up, and then be healthy, cool, and then we'll see what the future holds for him. That'd be nice. But just the fact that he's showing up to a convention.
I'm glad you told me. I had no idea that was going down.
Yeah, that was kind of a big shocker on the internet for a while, and I guess it's common knowledge now. So we'll see. He's booked on the bill. We never know. So I'll get only a couple questions left for the night, but we'll go back over to the chat for a second. So Jay's Tacos and Guitars was saying amen to Prince, because when you mentioned Prince early on as well. Seventh Oasis, and Prince was actually, just to touch base on that for a second, two musicians that we lost that really had an impact on me, and I was just I don't want to say a closet fan, but just like a normal fan. Prince was one, and David Bowie. I don't think I've ever actually owned a David Bowie record, but when he passed, and Prince I've had a couple over the years, but man, they impacted me. So obviously there's that subliminal influence that you don't really realize, and what a loss with those two.
Well, I think the biggest bootleg collection I have is Prince. He was the ultimate end-all, be-all artist for me. And again, it's strange that because I'm primarily known as a metal rock singer, that would be one of my biggest influences as a performer, as a writer, as a singer, all of the above. He was just a force to be reckoned with himself. I just love that he was just like Queen, he was one of those artists that had no boundaries, had no walls. Mm-hmm. He could get away with anything and make you believe it. Yep. And that to me is the epitome of music, and it's the epitome of wanting to be that kind of artist. And a lot of people, if you look into my own history and you see the catalog of records I made and the many bands I've been in, I think it probably leans into those situations. It's unfortunate that I haven't found that one thing just to stay with and hone in on and just ride my entire career out on it. But the problem is when you're influenced so hard by Prince or Queen, you're always chasing something different. You're always chasing a challenge. And you get in a band with guys and they're like, okay, well let's do this and put on the blinders and stay in the bubble. I've always been chasing to do something else, something different, something extra, something that challenges me, and that's why I do so many different things, because it gives me a chance to do it with that. What I'm going to do with you, I can't do here. What I'm going to do with you, I can't do here. I guess even it's the excuse of Mike Portnoy of why he does so many different things, because he can just run the gamut of everything he's ever wanted to do with all the different bands, because there's not one complete situation he can just do with one.
You know, something to go on a little tangent with Mike for a second too, and I'll be interviewing him on Friday, so I'm anxious to talk to him about that as well too.
So you get to have all five of us then.
All five. Mike.
Awesome.
Mike rounds it out, so he gets to be thinking about all these questions ahead of time. And I was actually talking to him by email tonight. So
I love Mike's interviews. He doesn't have to think. I love listening to him. He's got so much to talk about. He's a great interview.
I'm looking forward to it. But you know, that's something that really sparked the internet's attention, got my attention. I'm a huge Rush fan. I love Rush to death.
Me too.
Yeah, right up there with Van Halen. And someone had just posed the question, and some of these things get really blown out of context. Even Eddie Trunk had said something about, Alex and Getty doing a side project, whatever, Lee Lifeson. It was just a joke, and then now the whole world thinks that's going to be a band. And then someone said, who would you get for a drummer? And they must have tagged Mike Portnoy, and Mike says, oh, I'd be game. And can you imagine if there's any drummers out there, that could do it and put a smile on their face while they're doing it and do it justice? And Mike, I remember Mike saying something along the lines of, I'd be there in a heartbeat. And number two, but I would have to have Neil's blessing. So that's class act number one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, who knows what's ever going to happen? But
Have you ever seen Mike's Rush cover band or Rush tribute band?
I have not. No, I have not.
Maybe there's some stuff on YouTube, but he's actually released a DVD with. I don't think it's. I think they move around. It's mostly old Rush.
Okay.
But they do Cygnus. They do all the complicated stuff in it, and he is hit for hit, pound for pound. He knows it, and that's the thing about Mike. He's so particular when especially a band like that. He won't not hit that ride if that ride belongs there in that particular part of the song. He'll know when that tom is hit compared to when this tom is hit.
Yeah.
And with Rush, that's why he would be the perfect choice, because he would know every detail and he would learn every detail. If he thinks he might be skimping on something, he'd learn it and make sure I'm going to pay absolute homage or tribute to Neil Peart, and it's going to be exactly how it should be. I'm not going to reinvent it and make it my own. It goes back to what I said about singing David Lee Roth stuff.
Yeah.
We have to pay tribute to the guys. You can't help it.
Yeah. Mike has the opportunity to be himself in many bands, but he would, if he was to drum for Rush, he would do the song.
Hit for hit, he would just do the songs the way they're supposed to be heard.
Yep.
And the story.
That's right. I'll ask him about that on Friday too. That'll be fun. And that's not the first time, hit for hit, pound for pound. Derek said that exact same statement before in another context, so that's awesome.
My God, that's funny.
Hit for hit, pound for pound.
We're already thinking each other's thoughts.
That shows the common synergy between you guys. So that's awesome. A few last comments here in the chat. We're going to be wrapping up real soon, guys. Seventh Waitster says, magical moment of being lost in the music will transpire to the audience. Been there. Rowcamp 56 says, good evening, Eric and Jeff. Great show. Thanks, Eric, for bringing on so many great artists. Jeff, awesome voice on all your albums. New project, Sons of Apollo, is a perfect fit.
Nice.
Thank you.
Love that. Love hearing that.
This is nice.
And I don't mind. I don't even mind the negative stuff, because you gotta have the good with the bad.
Of course.
And a lot of people just they take the bad horribly. They don't know how to take it as constructive.
Yep.
I'll take the bad and I'll analyze it.
Of course.
Are they doing it just because they're just trying to be mean, or they have nothing better to do, or do I have something to learn from this? So I always know how to. I don't mind constructive criticism.
Yep.
It's important.
I've learned a lot from the fans on the show. They've said some things, Eric, you may be doing this too much, or Eric, you should do this. Sometimes it's like, I don't agree with you. Other times, like, you know what? You got a great
point. Shut up, it's my show.
That's right. And you're like, that's a great point. And you work it into the routine, and it's worked. Biggle says, just Google this guy. Great singer. I love it. Seventh Oasis also, who just commented a minute ago, said Jeff Scott Soto must be a very creative writer and vocalist to work with all these great musicians and bands. Of course. For sure. And yes, Jeff and I were talking about this off the air. Justin Gardy says, did anyone hear Sammy's interview with Eddie Trunk today? Basically he said we can forget about a reunion. It's one of those things where he wasn't wished a happy birthday from the family. And, I love Sammy, but, just don't put the cart before the horse. And see, that's what David Lee Roth, we love Dave to death, but David shot himself in the foot with a Colt 45.
When he the MTV Awards, yeah.
Yes, he did. And the fans were like, yes, we got him back. And then it was like, we're here, and Beck's up to get his award. And then Dave turned it into the Dave show. Eddie was going through some hip problems, put all that together. It's like, if they could have just come out, don't put your carts before the horse. And Sammy's done that a few times, and who knows? Yeah. 2018's coming. Let's just wait it out and see what happens.
Honestly, if Ed wants to get back out there, he's got no other choice. I mean, again, my love for David Lee Roth is endless, and to the grave, I will always defend this guy. But I just don't like what his voice has turned into, and I think the fans wouldn't give a third tour the same welcome as the past two.
Yeah,
that's just my honest opinion.
I agree. The first one was rough. Second one was a little rougher.
Yeah, I think it would have to be Sammy. Otherwise, I think Ed should just record his porn music or whatever he does on the side.
Yep, do whatever for sure. Yeah, just made some solo material. So Quentin James says, 1 thumbs down from Yngwie. He says, someone thumb down. I hit that like button. I don't think it's from Yngwie. It's probably from somebody else. That's right. Yngwie's got better things to do than watch my show, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Fire more singers. No, I did not say that. Your mom says, and there actually is a person called your mom. Your mom says, when I was a kid, I was way into my first 2 Yngwie albums. My mom hated metal, but loved Yngwie because of Scott's voice. There you go. You see, you win over the moms.
Oh, Scott for the first time tonight. Awesome. I get that. And again, David Lee Roth, the Van Halen connection.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, every time somebody accidentally or doesn't realize they're calling me Scott, I always say, do you ever call David Lee Roth Lee? I always use David Lee Roth as a reference when somebody calls me Scott.
Well,
you didn't mean it, but you called me Scott, so you're going to get the David Lee Roth.
There you go. Well,
answer.
I'll make you feel at home as well too, and not so naive when it happens to that. Because when I was a kid, I had the Hit Parader. Actually, I had a Q107, which is a great radio station in Toronto. Q107 calendar, and there was a fold out. I'm sure that's what it was from, and it was a 4-panel fold out, and it said Van Halen. Had this big singer, blonde hair, and the crazy leopard, red leopard type print things on whatever, and it said Van Halen. And I said, this Van guy is really weird. I didn't know them yet, so Van's weird because I'm thinking Van Morrison, so it must be Van, Mr.
Oh,
Mr.
right.
Yeah, so there you don't have to feel so bad.
Yeah, we thought it was Jim Dandy.
That's right. I know it wasn't. Well, carbon copy him, wasn't it? Don Shepard says another great show, Eric, and Vito Bratta doesn't even play anymore. He's saying, and how does that happen to great talent? Some people, I think. The guys in Sons of Apollo are a perfect example. Guys are going to play until the end of time. Billy's a perfect example of that. I joked with both Billy and Rudy Sarzo, two amazing bass players. I said, I bet you when you guys retire, most people would assume when you guys retire, you're going to play less bass. You guys will play more. And the true musician it's got it in his blood, his or her soul, will play until a physical impediment will take over them and they can't do it. And some people, we talked about Jason Becker earlier, he's physically incapable of touching the instrument anymore, still not giving up. So, keep going.
We want to do it. That's the thing. We want to do it. If it's for 2 people, if it's for 200,000 people, we want to do it. It's in our DNA. And if you walk away from it, you just don't want to do it anymore. You can't blame somebody for it. It's a shame. It's a pity. But I want to do it. And there's nothing else I want to do except for this. I don't want to quote Dee Snider, but I want to rock.
That's right. There you go. I think this is Rockland, says watching from Indonesia. Thank you, Rockland. That's awesome. So 2 last questions for you, and then we're going to let you go. We're going to try to catch the last of what looks like possibly a blowout baseball game. Where did I leave off? So yeah, Ron was telling me, he said that the record's done, it's out, it's sent off to the press, it's coming out, being released on October 20th there a while back, and before it was even out to the press for samples, Derek was already sending you guys some samples. Okay, I got an idea for the next record. I think that's awesome, and I think that creativity that's within the band and the urge to get more music out can be very contagious. Do you find that with a lot of the guys that everybody just wants to just keep this thing going?
I'm actually pissed because I haven't heard what he sent to Ron. But
okay.
Derek and I have been writing on this side as well.
Okay.
I was so happy when Derek said, "Dude, I know you're busy and I know you're about to take off for TSO, but it'd be great if we can get together. I have some ideas I want to play you. If we could just sit with them and kind of, mull over a few things, see if it's for us, see if it's something we can mold into new Sons of Apollo, and even come up with new material that we add to the live set. Then can you imagine doing? Because Van Halen used to do that. There were only a handful of bands that would play a brand new song that would be on the next album eventually before it's actually even perfected.
That's right.
And I love the idea of that. And I think we've got like 4 or 5 ideas on my computer that unfortunately I didn't get a chance to demo up, but I've already started working on. And I promised them while I'm on the road with TSO, I'm gonna work on some things. So when I get off the road, we can tweak and see if we can turn it into something even before the Suns tour begins.
Nice, that'd be great. And fans,
but it's already thinking into the future, and that answers the biggest question everybody asks about this band. It's not a project; it's a band. We're in it for the long haul. We want this to be successful. And even if it's not successful, we decided and committed and made the decision to make this band. So we're going to follow through with it. We're going to make another album. We're going to do tours. This is something real for us. We still have our other things that we have passions for, but we're not going to let those things go. But this is a band, and I couldn't be happier that they want to continue. They want to turn it into such.
That's awesome. The fans that have just invested in this now, and when I say invested, I'm not talking about buying the record, but okay,
exactly.
I want to absorb this
band.
band.
That they're going to have, we're going to be around and we're going to follow through.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great peace of mind for them. Bane Rocks, my little guy, who's a musician extraordinaire, is jumping in for the end of the night, and he has to go to bed soon. Last question here. This is comment from Dave John Ross. Says Jeff's vocals and melodies transcend the genre. Many would pigeonhole Sons of Apollo to. Yeah, and I agree because, prog, like you said, he's either going to be, or it's going to be like Derek would say, Cookie Monster vocals or anywhere in between, and it's not.
Right.
Absolute killer album that jumped, and actually I think I didn't get the tail end of it, but very, very cool. So as we wrap up, we're 10:23 here Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to combine two questions into one. Number one, other than we're talking possibly a 2018 Sons of Apollo tour, what are your plans going into the holidays? I can't believe we're in November already, and Christmas and whatever you celebrate, through the holidays. What's on your immediate forecasts and radar?
What's today? Wednesday. I leave on Saturday, which is my birthday. Everybody's like, "Hey, how are you going to spend your birthday?" I'll be on a plane to Omaha.
Okay.
They've already started rehearsing. The band, TSO, started rehearsing for the tour, and the singers will start trickling in. And we launched the TSO tour on November 16th. So that's the rest of my year. I get home on January 1st. And then I basically have a month to truly learn and understand and remember all the songs from the Sons of Apollo album on top of some other things we're discussing to add to the set, because we're launching. I think we're going to start getting together just after the NAMM show. And our first show is on the Cruise to the Edge. On February 3rd, we leave on the cruise from Miami, I believe it is. And our second show has been announced. We're playing the pre-show party for the Monsters of Rock cruise. We're not doing the Monsters of Rock cruise. We're just doing the pre-show party that's on land.
Okay.
And from that, I hear that's where everything begins. So without giving too much information, the tour is pending. I've seen a basic map of exactly what's going on for 2018, and it looks busy.
Nice. Busy is good. That's awesome. Well, listen, last comments. Jay's Tacos Guitar says Jeff's getting up there in the rankings for the biggest Van Halen fan. And thank you, Eric and Jeff, for an awesome show. And he also wished you an early happy birthday. And from all of us here at evhgeartv, happy birthday too. And
hey, before we move on, I wanted to ask you, because you keep talking about when you were younger, you had long hair, you played. What's this backstory on your playing? When you have a band, do you have something we can look up? And as we're talking about me all night, I want to actually check you out.
I appreciate that. That's very cool, and I wasn't prepared for that. No, I retired in 2012. I played in a Van Halen tribute band at one time back in the 80s. Oh, nice. Yeah, 5150 in Canada, and that's where I learned my things. Like you learned with Yngwie, I learned my stuff from that business about image and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So we'll find stuff on YouTube. Are you playing with it?
Not with the Van Halen band. You'll find Finding Core. Finding Core is my biggest project that I put my life into. It was like, if this doesn't work, that's it. We went through a lot of different members, shopped labels. Roadrunner Records almost picked us up, and they didn't like our singer. And I was the last kind of controlling member of the band, and I was taking one for the team. If they didn't like my singer, you don't get us. And at the time, maybe the right decision would have been get another singer, but I stand by my decision. I retired in 2012. Before that, around 2008, got picked up by evhgear as an artist and still on the roster there. But this, talking to people, I still play guitar every day, but it's not about the guitar anymore. It's about talking to kick-ass people like you that inspire all of us. So thank you for putting the ball back in my court. I'm going to turn it back to you.
I love it. I mean, just looking at the gear in the background there, I see the is it a Charvel back there?
No, all EVH, all from the Charvel family, I guess, Fender family. But everything in the house here is EVH, and then some PVs as well too from Eddie's day. But everything's EVH. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Only 3 letters in my alphabet: E, V, and H.
Those amps are so good. My God. And it's funny. Again, we're sidetracking, but get these kids that go to Guitar Center or they pick up an EVH amp and go, "I'm going to sound like Eddie Van Halen." No, you ain't.
No one does.
Because most guitar players don't realize most of it's in the fingers.
Exactly.
It's not about the tone of the pickups and all the right setups and all. It's about what those fingers are doing.
Yep.
I've seen people play Ed's guitar before, and it doesn't sound like Ed's guitar anymore.
Nope.
But Ed can pick up somebody else's guitar through not his gear, and it'll sound like Ed. So it's kind of funny, but those are great amps.
Yeah, I do love them for sure. But that's very, very kind of you to ask, and that's going to be my.
I'm going to look you up, man. I want to check your stuff out.
I'll send you some stuff. I'll save you the
trouble.
Awesome. I'll send you some. So listen, everyone, thank you so very, very much for tuning in tonight. I had a great night with all of you in the chat. You fans are what make this show happen, and because of you making these numbers go up on the channels, the Facebook page, and things like that. It attracts the attention of people like Jeff and Mike and Ron and Billy and all these great guests coming on, and they wouldn't do it if they didn't have the good people to speak to. And man, we've got some good fans of Sons of of Apollo, and I can't wait to keep preaching that word. Obviously, I'm going to be a Van Halen fan till the end of days, but you guys are Van Halen fans. Why not share the love of both bands together with all the fans?
There's so much Van Halen injected into this band, and you're going to see that and hear that. Not necessarily.
No,
actually, even in some of the songs, there's a pre-chorus in Coming Home that was all structured around the way Van Halen would write, like Panama or
Incredible Rock,
Unchained.
even.
Yeah,
Because Derek told me that he's doing the.
Where's the voice screaming out of my head?
Yep.
There's the truth. Where they sing and I sing, that was all Van Halen oriented. So yeah, you're going to get a lot of that from us.
You're going to love it. Derek told me, I think it was the Wurlitzer through the Marshall kind of thing. It was a nod to it. Yeah. So yeah, he's Mr. Van Halen himself.
But I can't believe an hour and a half blazed by. It was such an honor and a pleasure to do this. It truly is unbelievable that an hour and a half passed by. It feels like we've been talking for 10 minutes.
I'm happy that you feel that way, because I tell guests that it is going to go by fast. Whether you like it or not, it goes by fast. So, I mean, when people say 90 minutes, I don't know if I can do 90 minutes. It goes by fast. So, listen.
Well, you're a great host, so you know how to keep it flowing. So, you got a great thing going.
Thank you.
I wish you the best, and I hope it keeps expanding, and your fan base just keeps growing. This was a pleasure.
Thank you. And you have a lot to do with this. The whole camp, I'm going to tell Mike the same thing on Friday. Sons of Apollo organization has been great to me. God bless for you guys. Thank you.
Awesome, man.
I'm going to say goodbye to you off the air. Guys and girls over in the chat, thank you so very much for making this show great tonight. You were a great audience for Jeff. And check out Sons of Apollo. The links are down in the description below to both Jeff's website, Sons of Apollo, Jeff's Facebook page. Go give him some love on Facebook and tell him you saw him on evhgeartv. So I'm going to turn to the little man. He's going to tell us his name and what he's playing. We'll say goodbye to you off the air. Guys, see you Friday night with Mike Portnoy, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.